taillights designed by Ray-Ban. Those humps just don't work. Ferrari's absolutely lost since the 458, with the only exception being the Roma. Good for them that there is a lot of rich bodies with no concept of elegance and beauty. As I'm sure you know by now, Ferrari has released the 296 GTB, and I made a video on my second channel talking about this design and what I think of it and how it applies to previous generations or the last decade of Ferrari design and how different this actually is. There were a few things that I wasn't really sure about, and in this video I'm gonna redesign those little tweaks into this design. It's going to be a video where I think small changes are going to make a huge difference in this design. If you haven't checked the first video out, I would suggest you go and do that, because it's going to make a lot more sense what we're going to do in this video, because I'm gonna take what I said in the video and apply to these changes, but also talk about the comments that I got on that video regarding this design. For example, we have here taillights designed by Ray-Ban. Those humps just don't work. Ferrari's absolutely lost since the 458, with the only exception being the Roma. Good for them that there is a lot of rich bodies with no concept of elegance and beauty. These are comments on the 296 GTB here. The only thing I don't care about for on the 296 are the headlights, and this is one a topic or issue that I saw a lot of people commenting about, is the headlights, and I'm gonna talk about that, what I think about the headlights in just a second here. He says they feel underwhelming. I would put a full light bar instead of floating on top of those small intakes that you have right next to the headlights. And we also have, this is a pretty long comment here, but the key takeaways here are the headlights seems very uninspired, rear lights looks like sunglasses, just as the Ray-Ban comment, and the rear arches that it goes over the rear axle seems a little that the styling is from 250 LM. I think it looks a lot like a Ford GT as well, but it seems like it's interrupting the flow of the car and squished together, and I can kind of see why that is. I'm also going to show you that in a second. And this is, Lucas says, the SF90 made uglier, and you get the 296. And sorry, this is not a Ferrari. It looks more like a C8 Corvette. Ouch! Corvette meet an Acura NSX. No design lineage from Alman. So let's have a look at the 296 here and address these comments and what I think about the comments. So let's start with the rear view here. I said in the video that I wasn't sure about these taillights because they feel almost a little bit too Knight Rider or too simplistic in a way, for having to put just the line here, and the line doesn't play with the housing in which the line sits within, if that makes sense. So you have this Ray-Ban design right here, but then you have a line inside of that. So why do we have this piece here? Why do we have this little separation here if we're just gonna have one single line? It would make sense maybe if we were to have a separation between this line here, so maybe have something like this, because now we have a function, we have a reason for why this piece is down here. But if we have a single line like this, I can understand why some people think that these taillights are not good enough, and I'm gonna change that in this redesign also. And let's talk about the rear fenders here, or the rear bulge that we have going right about here. As you can see, this is a very 250 LM Ford GT style design that we have here. But this is something I also talked about. I think I talked about it, but it does look a little off. There is something that's a little off with the hump here. It's a beautiful design. I love how it continues from the air intakes going here and into this, and then dips a little bit right here. But something might be a little off here, so I'm gonna have some fun and play around with this. I think the problem is that I want to maybe have it be stretched further back. So we have this line here. I want to stretch it so that it goes into this piece right here and not dip down in the back part of this design. That might help this design. We're gonna have to experiment with that and see if that's the case. Another thing that I was bothered by, or that I think could have been done better, I love the Ferrari 458. I think it's one of the best looking Pininfarina designs ever, and one of the most beautiful Ferraris. ever as well. And I think this greenhouse line here, where you have the black A-pillar in combination with this hard edge up here, I would rather have a 458 line that is smooth transition between these two pieces here, and also have the A-pillar be the body color of the car. So let's have a look at the front view here. And what the comment was a lot that I saw was about this headlight here, and how simplistic, and if you pay $250,000 and up, which is probably going to be around the base price of this car, you want to have something more special. And I can definitely see that as well. So what I'm going to do here is take some inspiration from the 458 Italia, which has these slots going up on the fender, following the light and the line of the fender. So let's do something like that on here as well. Meaning we need to create some sort of intake or slot here that goes up here. And what I want to do with this is create, you have this LED here, so I want to have this LED continue all the way into this slot, going down like this, almost like a brush of a pen, or a brush of a stroke of a brush. LED be the more elegant piece of the front lights, and I think that could actually work. Now we only have this tiny little piece of LED here. To me, it looks pretty clean. I like the clean look of this, and simplicity doesn't necessarily mean that it looks cheap. Oftentimes it's actually the opposite. But in this case, I can see that we have. Why not take inspiration from the 458 if we have that in our portfolio from 10 years ago, or 10 years ago or so? Take some inspiration from the 458 and apply it to the 296 here, because it's such a good design, the 458, and you can definitely see that it could work here with this package right here. But here we have the A-pillar that's blacked out. Not a fan, in my opinion. I want to have it be red, and also have the transition be a lot smoother, and bring back those tiny thin A-pillars that we have on the 458 as well. I think it would suit this car as well. I'm not sure about this, but I get that it's a Ferrari thing. They have it with SF90, the Enzo, and it looks like a Lotus Evora, someone said, and I can definitely see some Evora there. Also see some Koenigsegg with this wraparound visor design that we have right here, that Ferrari seems to be using more and more. But in this view, we can see more the rear arch here, and the bulge that has this funny design to it. It has a very unique approach to it. It looks a lot like a 60s car. That's what I like about it. But if we have this, I'm not sure that it follows the same kind of philosophy as we have in these designs right here. So we might want to have to just flatten this out a little bit, keep the same peak of the bulge, but have these sides may blend in a little smoother in the side of the car. And I think that's it for what I'm gonna do here. So with that said, let's jump in and Photoshop here. Let's see how this is going to turn out. So this to me is one of the best looking Ferraris in a very, very long time. I would say since 2010, when the 458 came out, and the Pininfarina era of designing Ferraris. I think they're heading back to that type of styling now, and I'm really happy to see what they decided to do with the 296. It's also a smaller package. It's just a smaller sized Ferrari, going back to some old traditional proportions like the 250 and the Dino. It has some inspiration from that as well. It's just an interesting approach, and we've reached the point where you can't stylize the cars anymore. We've seen this with a bunch of different brands, going back to a lot more simpler approach to its styling and the lines. Just have a look at the great example with Ferrari is just have to go back to the original, the 458. The proportions of the 458, the lines, the styling, the graphics, and Ferrari took that package and then applied more and more things onto that package, and the end result after the 488 is the F8 Tributo, which you can see. I mean, maybe we're not all gonna agree on it, but to me the F8 Tributo is just a way overstyled car, and it does have too many irregularities in the chamfers and in the radiuses and the thicknesses of the graphics that it doesn't really make sense. All the fins in the front and all of that stuff, it looks way too overstyled. So this is a welcomed approach, for me at least, to see the 296, and the Roma as well is a very beautiful, going back to these traditional front engine GT cars that are not necessarily the fastest on track, but they will take you very comfortably from London to Paris, for example, on a long road trip in a continental cruiser style vehicle. I don't think the 296 needs a lot of changes, but why I'm doing this redesigns is because I wanted to address the comments that I saw, and some of them actually made sense and they had me reconsider the design of this car, and it would just be interesting to see what would happen if we made these small changes to the car. And I think when I was doing this, this is one of these typical redesigns where you don't have to do a lot to have a big impact on the end result. Specifically, I think the front, the headlights, they might look a little too big, but you have to think about the size of the overall car. This is not a big car, so having the headlights going far up on the side is going to distinguish the car and also give it a clear identity at night. And now I'm jumping into the rear view here and doing a couple of changes to the rear. For example, the big one being the F8 Tributo taillights, adding those to the car. And also, usually I'm not a fan of cars manufacturers when they put 21 inches in the rear and 20s in the front, for example, in different dimensions. I'm usually not a fan of that. But in this case, same with the 458, you have such a thick, massive, beefy rear tire that it actually looks smaller than the front one. So in this case, we might want to add a 21 in the rear and 20 in the front, because it all makes sense. It has a functionality too. You need beefier tires in the rear, specifically if you're dealing with 818 horsepower like we do in the 296 that propels the car from 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in just 2.9 seconds with a top speed of 205 miles per hour, or about 325 kilometers per hour, something like that. You need beefy rear tires, but I don't think that should come at the cost of the wheels kind of hiding within a beefy tire. I still want to have the wheel fill out the tire just like we have in the front as well. Alright guys, so I quickly would just want to show you the changes that we did here and how I think they actually made the car look a little more interesting, at least. Specifically, if you look at the front headlights here, and you can see that it has some 488, 458, but it is a modernization of that design. And I think if we add this LED like this, it suits Ferrari, because Ferrari is supposed to be elegant, graceful, and have a lot of nice flow to it. And if we have this LED like this, it kind of suits the philosophy of Ferrari, in my opinion. It will look, I think, a little bit more interesting than here. And maybe it will be worth now the $250,000, like someone said, that these lights are not worthy of a $250,000 car. Let me know if you think those would be more worthy of that price. And also look at this little change that we did right here. I think it maybe this might suit it better, but I'm still this is not a big deal for me. It just clashes a little bit with the rest of the curvatures that we have on the 296. And this is definitely a change that I want to do, is to just work with the A-pillar, make it a thin A-pillar like we have on the 458. You can have it thin on the outside, but in the back, on the inside, you can have it be thicker so that meets any requirements and regulations that we have for thickness of A-pillars. And the rear, we have a totally different look in the rear with the 4 taillights that I took from the F8 Tributo and just smacked onto the 296, and I think it turned out really, really cool. And here I think we can see the bulge a little better than we can in the front view, so we have a more of a continuous curvature here now, and not a wave, if you want to call it that. This is more of a continuous curve going into the new F8 Tributo taillights right there. I think it kind of looks a little better with these taillights. It definitely screams a lot more Ferrari when you have these quad 4 taillights, since it's a Ferrari trademark to have them. These, not sure. I have to see these in real life to kind of get an opinion of the original, of course, 296 GTB taillights. Other than that, just changing the A-pillar here as well and the wheel size. And that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about the 296 GTB. Are you a fan, or do you think they're heading in the wrong direction with this design language? Take care, and we'll see you in the next video.